Kia ora and welcome back to our educational webinar series on irritable bowel syndrome and the low FODMAP diet. Today you've got both myself and Esme returning after the last webinar to talk you through the next steps. Thanks for joining me, Esme.
No worries.
So this is the second webinar in the series, and this picture just shows where we are focusing today on phase Rua and Toru, or 2 and 3, the FODMAP reintroductions and personalisation phases.
Here is a bit of an overview of today's webinar. We will begin talking about where your symptoms are now, so you know the next steps you should take. We will discuss why we need to reintroduce high FODMAP foods, what FODMAP reintroductions actually are, and then how to do these, giving you practical examples you can use and guiding you through this section in the app. And we will spend some time talking about personalisation after the FODMAP reintroductions, what a healthy modified FODMAP diet should contain, and finally the cumulative effects of FODMAPs. Hopefully this will give you all the information you need to complete the FODMAP reintroduction phase and figure out how to self-manage your symptoms on a modified low FODMAP diet long term. So where are your symptoms at now? Just a bit of a recap to make sure we are all on the same page. By this stage you have hopefully had a formal diagnosis of IBS, implemented IBS basic strategies with little or no improvement, and then moved on to following the low FODMAP diet for about 4 weeks, and ideally you've seen an improvement in your symptoms. Hopefully you did a food and symptom diary prior to starting the low FODMAP diet. You've done at least a few days to a week of a food and symptom diary recently on the low FODMAP diet to really look back and see if your symptoms have improved. We do know that sometimes small changes in your symptoms can be overlooked without putting time into being in tune with them and adequately recording or capturing what's going on at the moment, and this is because of the chronic nature of the condition and symptoms that IBS sufferers experience. So you've done all this and your symptoms did improve, that's great, but your journey is not over yet. It's important to continue with the next steps and explore the FODMAP reintroductions to see what you can tolerate to allow your diet to be as varied and nutritious as possible. And if you don't think it improved your symptoms, then you could check your store following the basic dietary advice, and this hasn't gone out the window since you started low FODMAP diet, as this is still an important advice to be following to help manage your symptoms. Recheck the food you are eating a low FODMAP via the resources or the app to make sure you haven't accidentally included some high FODMAP food. Finally, you could continue the low FODMAP diet for a further 2 weeks to see if this makes a difference, but at this point we would think perhaps the low FODMAP diet is not the answer for you. On the other hand, if you're having trouble sticking to the low FODMAP diet and would like more one-to-one support, I would recommend getting referred to a private dietitian to support you with this, as we do understand it can be tricky. A list of private dietitians is available from the Dietitians New Zealand website. If you have followed the low FODMAP diet for 4 weeks and not seen any improvement in your symptoms with the low FODMAP diet and don't after a further 2 weeks, we can likely conclude that this isn't the answer in improving your IBS-related symptoms and suggest a review with your GP to check if there are other strategies you could try to improve your IBS, for example, medications or stress management techniques.
Now you may be thinking, why do we reintroduce FODMAPs if our symptoms have improved without them in our diet? And this is a valid thought to be having. However, the research has shown that FODMAPs are food for our beneficial gut bacteria, and that removing all FODMAPs long-term can alter bacteria in the gut and reduce levels of beneficial bacteria. We don't actually know what the long-term effects of this are, as the low FODMAP diet is still relatively new. Research has also shown that following the low FODMAP diet is restrictive and hard work, and any time we restrict food groups, we should only do this if there is a clear benefit, as a wide range of foods is needed to get adequate nutrients for our bodies. A low FODMAP diet can also reduce social enjoyment of eating, and here in Aotearoa, food is certainly a big part of how we socialise. I don't know about you, but there are not many birthday celebrations in my house without birthday cake, and wouldn't it be nice to know what you could tolerate at a birthday event or any celebration that involves food, so you don't feel anxious and you can enjoy yourself. Doing the FODMAP reintroductions helps you understand your triggers to enable you to self-manage your symptoms and hopefully gives you back a bit of autonomy and control over your food intake and your symptoms as a result. And hopefully it improves the quality of your life. It's also important to remember that with IBS, the symptoms do not always stay the same. This means that even if you find that you are not able to reintroduce much right now due to symptoms, you might find in 3, 6, or 12 months' time that your symptoms have improved and you are able to tolerate more. Another reason to do some reintroductions. And lastly, it's important to understand that most people can tolerate some categories of FODMAPs in some portion sizes. It's pretty unusual to have severe intolerable reactions to all categories of FODMAPs at all portion sizes. Therefore, it's usually unnecessary to restrict all of the FODMAP groups long term. Right, moving on to FODMAP reintroductions. You might be wondering by now what a FODMAP reintroduction is. Simply put, it is the intentional inclusion of a food that contains a single FODMAP in a controlled portion size to assess how you tolerate this particular FODMAP. We usually do 3 different levels, low, medium and high, of each FODMAP, and you can see from the flowchart on the right hand side of the screen how this looks in practice. Essentially, you start with the low serve on day 1, and then on day 2 you have the medium serve, and on day 3 you have the larger serve. If your symptoms get too much at level 1, you stop, and when your symptoms resolve, you move on to the next FODMAP category. If they're okay at level 1, you'd move to level 2. If they're tolerable at level 2, you would move to level 3. And if they're tolerable here, then yay, you're probably not sensitive to that particular FODMAP. If you stop at level 2, you can still tolerate a reasonable amount of the FODMAP, so that's still great. Now, a few key things to remember whilst doing the FODMAP reintroductions. You need to make sure you're feeling well prior to each FODMAP reintroduction, and you aren't having an increase in your IBS symptoms due to stress or something else prior to starting. Or if you stopped a FODMAP reintroduction because you were getting symptoms, you need to make sure those resolve before moving on to the next one. When doing these reintroductions, you need to stay on the low FODMAP diet except for the challenge food. Once you've done the reintroductions, you take that food out again and you move on until you've done all the reintroductions. Another important thing to remember is to use the same challenge food for the 3 serving sizes. Don't mix and match here. You can do the 11 different FODMAP categories in any order. Some people ask if you have to do all of the challenges, and generally we do encourage you to do so, unless it's something like onion or garlic fructans, and you simply don't like them and didn't have them even when you weren't on the low FODMAP diet. Some people are pretty confident of certain things they can't tolerate or would react to, but it is a good way to see if you can tolerate even small amounts, and if so, then that's a small win. It's best to keep a food and symptom diary in response to the FODMAP reintroductions, so you can clearly tell if you've had an increase in your symptoms or not. Later, we'll talk you through how to record the reintroductions and any symptoms associated with these in the Monash University app, and also show you a rough food and symptom diary you could use to record your symptoms. Some people find it helpful just to jot it down in the notes section of their phone, whatever works for you. Finally, it's important to understand that this takes time. It can take from 6 weeks to 3 months, depending on the days of the week you feel comfortable doing the reintroductions. Some people like to do the first reintroduction of each FODMAP category in the weekend to ensure they are near a bathroom and not having to face work in case they get significant symptoms. This obviously stretches out the time frame of how long the reintroductions would take. If you're unsure if you have had a reaction, then you can repeat the reintroduction to get a more convincing result. It's helpful to take a 2 to 3 day break between FODMAP categories just to ensure you're feeling well and any residual symptoms have resolved. It is a commitment and it does take time. So knowing what FODMAP reintroductions are is the first step, but it may still seem a bit overwhelming to actually get started, especially if you're feeling better without FODMAPs in your diet. But we have discussed the importance for everyone to do these FODMAP reintroductions, so here's a few tips to make starting a little bit less overwhelming. Firstly, I usually suggest starting with something you really miss. Think of a food you miss and look up its FODMAP content in the app and use that category for your first introduction. That can sort of be a proxy measure for if or how much of that food you might be able to tolerate in the future. Otherwise, it's good to start with one of the more simple categories, like garlic or onion, fructans, or lactose. I'd also recommend to keep it simple. Choose things that prior to the low FODMAP diet you would have readily eaten. We don't need you to try the most unusual food on the list for FODMAP containing foods. Sometimes if the foods are familiar, it's easier to start the challenges, rather than something you don't usually eat or you don't actually like. If you're worried about how your symptoms might go, then start in the weekend and also in the morning. This can give you time to relax and manage any symptoms you might get. You don't have to worry about being at work or out and about if you do get symptoms. And hopefully by starting earlier in the day, it doesn't affect your sleep.
So now we have a few recap questions from what we have discussed so far. Question 1. Why are FODMAP reintroductions important? A. No long-term studies about the low FODMAP diet. B. FODMAPs are good for good bacteria in the gut. C. Hard to follow a low FODMAP diet long-term. I'll give you a moment to answer that. So hopefully you guys thought they all seem correct as they are. Question 2. What should you not do if your symptoms haven't improved on the low FODMAP diet? A. Do food and symptom diary to compare to before starting. B. Continue on the low FODMAP diet indefinitely. C. Check your food intake is low FODMAP. D. Check your stool following IBS basics. I'll give you another moment to answer. B. No one should be continuing on the low FODMAP diet indefinitely. So FODMAP reintroductions. So listed on these slides are some of the options of foods to use for FODMAP reintroductions. These are also in the Monash University app and in the handout attached from Waitaha, which Nick will take you through after the next slide. So as you can see, you follow the processes of having a single portion on day 1, 2 portion sizes day 2, 3 portion sizes day 3. Remembering to stop when your symptoms become unmanageable. I'm going to talk you through 2 examples here for each of the FODMAP categories. We'll start with lactose. Your options are on day 1, milk, 125 mils or 125 mils of yogurt. Day 2, 250 mils of milk or yogurt. Day 3, 400 mils of milk and yogurt. Examples for fructose are on day 1, we've got 1.5 teaspoons of honey or a quarter of a mango. Day 2, 2 teaspoons of honey or half a mango. And day 3, 1 tablespoon of honey or 1 mango. Examples for mannitol are 2 small florets of cauliflower or half a celery stick for day 1. Day 2, 4 small florets of cauliflower or 1 celery stick. Day 3, 6 small florets of cauliflower or 1.5 celery sticks. Galacto-oligosaccharides. On day 1, we have 15 almonds or half a cup of chickpeas. Day 2, 20 almonds or 3/4 of a cup of chickpeas. Day 3, 30 almonds or 1 cup of chickpeas. Examples for sorbitol. On day 1, we have a quarter of an avocado or half an apricot. Day 2, half an avocado or 1 apricot. Day 3, 1 avocado or 2 apricots. Just continue on with examples here. Examples for fruit and veg fructans. Day 1, we have 3 Brussels sprouts or 3 slices of fresh beetroot. Day 2, 4 Brussels sprouts or 4 slices of fresh beetroot. Day 3, 6 Brussels sprouts or 6 slices of fresh beetroot. Onion fructans. Day 1, we have 1/8 of an onion. Day 2, a quarter of an onion. Day 3, half an onion. Obviously, there is no substitute here. Grain fructans, we've got day 1, 1 slice of wheatmeal bread or 3/4 a cup of wheat pasta. Day 2, 1.5 slices of bread or 1 cup of pasta. Day 3, 2 slices of wheat bread or 1.5 cups of pasta. Garlic fructans, we've got day 1, 1/4 clove of garlic. Day 2, half a clove of garlic. Day 3, 1 clove of garlic. Obviously, no other options here either. The last 2 reintroductions are of foods with 2 FODMAPs that are often found together in foods such as apples and pears. We would usually recommend leaving these to the end, that way you will already know what your tolerance to each of these individually, but now we want to learn how we tolerate them together. Fructose and sorbitol. Day 1, a quarter of medium apple or a quarter of a medium Packham or Nashi pear. Day 2, half a medium apple or half a medium Packham or Nashi pear. Day 3, 1 medium apple or 1 medium Packham or Nashi pear. Fructan and galacto-oligosaccharides. Day 1, whole grain wheat bread, 1.5 slices or 10 cashew nuts. Day 2, 2 slices of whole grain wheat bread or 20 cashew nuts. Day 3, 3 slices of whole grain wheat bread or 30 cashew nuts. Just a few tips for doing the reintroduction. We do recommend using the same test food for the 3 reintroductions. If you find the portion sizes excessive for the amount of foods, we would then recommend using half your usual daily intake from before the low FODMAP diet, then your usual daily intake, and then 1.5 times your usual daily intake of that FODMAP food. Remember, you need to be symptom-free to start any reintroduction. Next, we'll run you through how and where to find this on the Monash University Low FODMAP app, and then the handout from Wire to Heart that is available alongside this webinar.
So hopefully you're familiar with this being the home screen of the Monash University Low FODMAP app. Basically, I'm going to talk you through how to record your FODMAP reintroductions in here and also any symptoms that you might experience. So first we go to the diary section, which is the bottom right hand corner of the screen. And then we click the plus sign, which is the top right corner. This brings up 6 options, and so on the top row from left to right, the knife and fork is adding a meal. That's a picture of your gastrointestinal gut, so this is rating your symptoms. The next one with the apple and the ring around it is doing a reintroduction. On the bottom row, the one on the left is writing a note for yourself. The middle one with your brain is logging your stress level. And lastly, the bottom right one is logging your bowel motions. So essentially, we're going to start with logging a FODMAP reintroduction. So we're going to click on the apple with the ring around it, which will bring up this information, which we can select what type of reintroduction. So let's just use lactose because it's at the top. and then we can choose the food we want to use, and we'll just use milk because that's at the top. And we can save that. And so now in the diary, it's telling us on the 6th of December, we're doing a lactose reintroduction. So then we fast forward to some time later in the day where we're wanting to potentially log some symptoms. So we'd click the plus sign again, and we could log our bowel motions in here. And then we could also log some gastrointestinal side effects that we've got from the challenge today. So overall, our abdominal symptoms were not too bad. A little bit of pain and discomfort, maybe a little bit of bloating, and reasonable amount of wind, but say overall they're tolerable, and we can save that in there. So that's got sort of a summary of how we've gone in terms of our symptoms, and it's also relating it back to the FODMAP reintroduction category and also portion size that we were doing. So if we want to summarize this information, then we click that little share one, which is the second from the right at the top, and it generates a wee report. So we could just preview that, but say we'd done a number of challenges in there, we'd be able to have the report for a number of days, which is quite useful. So essentially that's how you do the FODMAP reintroductions and also the symptoms in there. And if you're not doing the reintroductions, you can still use the diary function just to log your symptoms, like a food and symptom diary, like we've talked about before. So you just come in and you log symptoms rather than adding any reintroduction from this screen, and that still logs all that information, and you can generate a report from that as well. If this overview hasn't met all the needs that you have, then I'd suggest looking up the Monash University low FODMAP blogs, and they've got lots of tips and tricks on using the app in there. So this here is the Waitaha FODMAP reintroduction information sheet. So it talks you through why we introduce FODMAPs and how to reduce them. It's outlined in this table. They actually have a day in between to ensure that you're sort of washing out from any symptoms, which you can do, but you don't have to. If you want to do them on consecutive days, you can. On the second page here, it has a step-by-step guide on how to do the low FODMAP reintroductions, and it highlights that there's 8 to do. So this one unfortunately doesn't cover the 2 mixed category reintroductions of sorbitol and fructose and fructans and galactans, which are the 2 additional challenges that kind of work you through some common FODMAP stacking. It talks here about your symptoms, and then on the last page it gives you those practical examples on what foods to use and what portion sizes for the 3 different FODMAP reintroductions. The next important thing to think about is how you monitor your symptoms over the challenge period. You need to be well before you start it, so you would hopefully find it relatively easy to notice an increase in symptoms, but sometimes it's not. And this is because IBS is a chronic condition, and you may have had it for quite some time, and you can get quite used to the symptoms and sometimes ignore them. If you keep a written record over this period, you'll have very accurate information and be tuned into your symptoms and able to identify what you have and haven't had an increase in symptoms in relation to. On the screen is an example of a table of how to record the reintroductions, and you'd simply repeat this for all of the reintroductions. We talked about using a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of severity of symptoms in the last webinar, and this would be helpful to use again whilst you're doing the reintroductions. It's also important to break your symptoms down into the different categories, so bloating, gas, distension, they could all have different ratings as they do in this example. It can also be helpful to write down how many bowel motions you may have and the type of bowel motions on the Bristol stool chart if this is something that is one of your IBS symptoms. And I highlighted earlier the other place to record your symptoms is in the app, and we went through this when we went through where to find the challenge foods. So if you can't remember, perhaps just rewind a little bit and have a look at that. It's time again for some more recap questions. So you might need to pause and use the app or resources to see that you can find these examples. Question 3. From the list below, what is an example of a single serve of lactose to use as a reintroduction? A. Milk 125 grams. B. Cheese 50 grams. C. Mango a quarter. Or D. Yogurt 250 mils. I'll give you a wee minute to have a think about that, and if you need to pause it, now would be a good time. So hopefully you've all remembered or used the app or resources to figure out it's milk at 125 mils, as the yogurt at 250 mils would be a lactose reintroduction, but that would be for the second day of a FODMAP reintroduction due to the portion size. Question 4. How many servings are there for each FODMAP reintroduction? A, 4, B, 2, C, 3, or C, 5, D, 3. Hopefully you've remembered there are 3 FODMAP reintroduction portion sizes for each FODMAP category. Question 5. What is an example of day 2, a medium portion of galacto-oligosaccharides? A, 30 almonds or 1 cup of chickpeas. B, 30 almonds or 2/3 of a cup of chickpeas. C, 20 almonds or 2/3 of a cup of chickpeas. Or D, 20 almonds or half a cup of chickpeas. Again, if you want to look into the app or the resources, now would be a good time to pause. Hopefully you could figure out from the app or the previous slides and handouts that the answer is C, 20 almonds or 2/3 of a cup of chickpeas.
FODMAP personalisation. So now we are going to fast forward to having completed all 11 FODMAP reintroductions and what that means. Essentially, you will have figured out if you can tolerate a little, a moderate amount, or a large portion of each of the FODMAP categories from the reintroductions based on the portion you could manage without getting significant symptoms. Now, it's important to remember from here on it's very personalised and no two people will have exactly the same responses or tolerance levels to all the FODMAPs, so we encourage you to set the filters in the app to help you to liberalise your diet without having any unnecessary restrictions. How to do this, which will be shown to you after the slide. It's also very important that if you don't react to it, then don't exclude it, as we talked earlier about some FODMAPs being good for food, good for gut bacteria, and general good gut health. The other thing to remember is IBS is multifactorial and your tolerance to certain FODMAPs could change over time. For example, in a more or less stressful time in your life, your FODMAP tolerance could change. It is always good to retry FODMAP categories every 6 to 12 months to ensure you are not restricting your diet unnecessarily. This might not be the whole formal process of 3 portion sizes for each category, but just more a portion size you might normally eat now and then and see what happens.
So as you can see, this is the homepage of the Monash University Low FODMAP app. And to find the filters, you're going to click on Food Diet Guide and then click on these lines up in the top right hand corner. And then normally the filtering would be turned off. You'd click Enable Filtering. And this is how you can personalise it to your tolerance. So say you can tolerate medium portions of fructose, you're fine with lactose, medium portions of mannitol, fine with sorbitol, galacto-oligosaccharides and medium portions of fructans. You would set the filters like this. And then when you go back to the food guide, only the foods that meet your preferences would show up, so that you've got a more comprehensive food list, and things that don't meet your tolerances wouldn't show up.
A healthy low FODMAP diet. So what does a healthy modified low FODMAP diet look like? Well, although we have said it is different for everyone, it should definitely be a general healthy diet that is recommended to the entire population, just without the FODMAP groups that include significant symptoms for each of you, and should consist of at least 5 servings of vegetables and 2 servings of fruit per day, so low fructose, sorbitol, mannitol, onion or garlic fructans for some people but not all, 6 of whole grain, high fibre, carbohydrate or grain foods each day, wheat-free if sensitive to wheat fructans, 2.5 to 4 servings of low-fat dairy products, lactose-free if sensitive to lactose, 1 to 2 serves of low-fat protein such as legumes, nuts, seeds, fish, seafood, eggs, poultry, red meat, low FODMAP options or serving sizes if needed, and at least 2 litres of water to meet fluid requirements. Cumulative effects of FODMAPs. This is also known as FODMAP stacking. Too many serves of FODMAPs, even if they are green serves in a short period of time, can cause symptoms. In 1 meal or 2 to 3 hour period, this could be stacked from one FODMAP category, such as too many green serves of fructose, or it could be from combining garlic, onion and wheat fructans in the same meal that individually you could tolerate the serving sizes. For example, if you went out for dinner and had a garlic bread, followed by a roasted onion fettuccine meal and a pudding of brownie and yogurt, even though you have challenged garlic, onion and wheat fructans separately and think you tolerate them with no symptoms, this is a large load of FODMAPs, so it could still increase your IBS symptoms. This is called a cumulative or additive effect and is something to think about. Again, this response is very individualized, so it's hard to outline it in any more detail here, but if you have gone out for one for a meal or eaten things you thought you could tolerate from multiple categories, then have a think about the entire dose of FODMAPs and if perhaps you just overdid it and this contributed to the increased symptoms.
Now, we have covered a lot today, but there are many sources of additional information on this slide, including the Monash University blog section, which has lots of great blogs covering FODMAP reintroductions, talks you through using the app and the diary function in the app as well. There's some recipes from A Little Bit Yummy in the Healthy Food Guide, which can help while you're on the low FODMAP or reintroduction phases, and you can also access the resource from Waitaha that I talked through earlier. And finally, thanks so much for joining us, and hopefully you feel well equipped to implement the low FODMAP diet, do the FODMAP reintroductions and personalise your diet based on what you've learned. Please remember that you can meet with a private dietitian if you need extra support, and we would be very grateful if you could do the follow-up survey so we can see how you're finding the new webinar series. Good luck, and ka kite anō.